What if I told you that the life you're living right now, your success, your struggles, your confidence, your fear, is nothing more than a reflection of the thoughts you choose to feed every single day? What if the one thing standing between the life you have and the life you want isn't luck, money, or timing, but simply the way you think? Because the truth is this, your mind is the steering wheel of your destiny. And the moment you learn to control your thoughts, you stop living by default and start living by design. Everything in your life begins with a thought. And the moment you truly understand that, you realize just how much power you've had all along. Most people walk through life thinking their circumstances shape their thoughts, when in reality, it's their thoughts that shape their circumstances. Your mind is constantly building the blueprint for the life you experience. Every belief, every assumption, every expectation, these are the invisible architects behind your actions, your results, and ultimately your destiny. When you start paying attention to the thoughts you allow into your mind, you begin to see the undeniable truth. Nothing changes out here until something changes in here. Think about the people who are thriving, who are unstoppable, who seem to create opportunity everywhere they go. They're not just lucky. They're not wired differently. They have learned to command their inner world. They understand that the quality of their thoughts directly influences the quality of their emotions, and their emotions drive their actions. When someone repeatedly tells themselves they are capable, resourceful, and relentless, they show up differently. They take different actions. They push a little harder, stay a little longer, focus a little deeper. And those little shifts compound into massive results over time. On the other hand, when someone repeatedly convinces themselves that life is against them, that they're not enough, that success is for other people, those thoughts become chains that hold them in place. You don't get what you want, you get what you believe. And beliefs start as thoughts you repeat often enough that they become your personal truth. So the real question is, what truths have you been living by that were never truly yours? What stories have you accepted, maybe from your past, your environment, or the people around you, that have convinced you to play small? Every time you think, I can't, I'm not ready, I don't deserve it, you reinforce a pattern that becomes your reality. But the moment you begin to question those thoughts, to challenge them, to interrupt them, you crack open the door to a different life. There's a reason certain people rise out of circumstances that others never escape. It's not because they were given a secret map. It's because they changed their thoughts long before their environment changed. They decided to believe in a version of themselves that nobody else could see yet. They decided that their current situation was not their final destination. They decided that their thoughts would not be dictated by fear, comparison, or limitation. And that decision, sometimes made in silence, in a moment of frustration or clarity, became the turning point. What you repeatedly tell yourself becomes the instructions your mind follows. If you constantly think about obstacles, your brain begins to expect resistance. If you constantly think about opportunities, your mind starts scanning for possibility. The world becomes a reflection of what you think about most. When you shift your thoughts from limitation to potential, your energy changes, your posture changes, the way you speak and respond changes. People feel that shift before you even open your mouth. Because when your thoughts are aligned with your power, everything about you aligns with it too. But here's the challenge. Most people don't even realize how many of their thoughts are automatic. They don't question them, they don't interrupt them, they don't choose them, they simply react. The human mind has a bias toward fear and doubt because it's wired for survival. But your greatest life doesn't come from survival thinking. It comes from intentional thinking. It comes from the thoughts you choose times to feed, not the ones that show up uninvited. Imagine what would happen if, instead of waking up and unconsciously replaying the same old narrative, I'm tired, I'm stressed, nothing is changing, you consciously directed your mind toward thoughts that elevate you, thoughts that energize you, thoughts that move you forward. The moment you begin to choose empowering thoughts consistently, you start to fire new patterns in your brain. You create new emotional states. You change your behavior. You create new outcomes. This is the foundation of transformation. It always begins at the level of thought. Your thoughts are not just ideas bouncing around in your head. They are commands. They are signals. They are blueprints. And every time you think something with emotion, your mind goes to work making it real. That is why controlling your thoughts is the most important skill you can ever master. Because once you control your thoughts, you control your emotions. Once you control your emotions, you control your actions. And when you control your actions, you control your destiny. You are not at the mercy of your thoughts. You are the creator of them. And the moment you decide to step into that role with intention, everything in your life begins to shift. Asterisk, asterisk, transform your thoughts, and you transform your life. Asterisk, asterisk, awareness is the gateway to every breakthrough you've ever wanted. You can't change a pattern you're not conscious of, and most people go through their entire lives on autopilot, thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, taking the same actions, and wondering why nothing changes. The truth is, you can't transform what you refuse to acknowledge. The moment you shine a light on your internal dialogue, everything starts to shift because awareness gives you the power to interrupt the story that's been running your life. Most people think thoughts just happen to them as if they're passengers inside their own minds. They don't realize that their thoughts are often leftover reactions from years ago, moments that hurt them, moments that scared them, moments that planted seeds of doubt that they never uprooted. Those old patterns keep playing, not because they're true, but because they've never been questioned. And without awareness, you end up living today with the mindset of who you were yesterday. That's why awareness is so powerful. It brings you back to the present. It puts your hands back on the wheel. When you become aware of your thoughts, you begin to notice the small, subtle moments where you sabotage yourself. You start to catch that whisper that says, you're not ready. You notice that tension in your chest when you think about taking a risk. You see how quickly your mind drifts toward the worst case scenario. And instead of letting those thoughts dictate your actions, you pause, you breathe, you observe. That pause is not small. That pause is everything. That pause is the difference between repeating the past and rewriting your future. Awareness is not about judgment. It's not about beating yourself up for thinking negatively. It's simply about noticing. The moment you notice, you reclaim choice. You realize you're not your thoughts, you're the one who hears them. And when you can see your thoughts from that place, suddenly they lose their grip. The fear doesn't feel as absolute. The doubt doesn't feel like your identity. The limitations don't feel like truth. They just feel like noise. And noise can be turned down. There's a shift that happens when you step into awareness. Life stops happening to you and starts happening for you. Instead of reacting unconsciously, you start responding intentionally. Instead of being driven by old emotional habits, you start choosing the emotions that align with the life you want to build. Instead of letting circumstances control your state, you begin to control your state so you can influence the circumstances. Awareness gives you the power to step out of the storm of your thoughts and into the position of observer, calm, clear, and capable of choosing a different direction. Think about how many opportunities you've walked past because you weren't aware of the fear holding you back. Think about how many goals you never started because you didn't even realize your self-talk was defeating you before you tried. Think about how many cycles you repeated because you couldn't see the belief driving the behavior. When you bring awareness to those moments, they stop being invisible forces controlling your life. They become the doorway to change. Awareness is not just noticing what's wrong, it's noticing what's possible. It's catching yourself when you think too small. It's recognizing when you're waiting for permission you don't need. It's realizing when you've been accepting a life far below your potential. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Awareness becomes the catalyst for new thoughts, new emotions, new actions, and new results. It's the spark that sets the rest of the transformation in motion. Every breakthrough begins the moment you become aware of what's been stopping you. And in that moment, you gain the power to step into who you were meant to be. Asterisk, asterisk, awareness is the first step toward reclaiming your life. Asterisk, asterisk. Limiting beliefs are some of the most powerful forces shaping your life, not because they are true, but because you've believed them long enough that they feel real. Everyone has them. They hide in the background, subtly influencing decisions, reactions, and expectations. They convince you to play small long before you ever take action. And the funny thing is, most of these beliefs didn't even start with you. They came from childhood experiences, moments of embarrassment, failures that stung, opinions from people who had no idea what you were capable of. Yet those moments planted seeds, seeds that grew into stories, and those stories became the walls you keep running into today. When you start to examine these beliefs, you realize how many of them have nothing to do with your true potential. Maybe you were told you weren't smart enough, so you stopped trying. Maybe you failed once, so you decided you weren't capable. Maybe someone laughed at your dreams, so you shrank it down to something more acceptable. These beliefs become patterns, They become part of your identity, not because they belong there, but because they've gone unchallenged. And the mind loves patterns. It repeats them, reinforces them, and builds your behavior around them. But here's the truth. You are not limited by your potential. You are limited by the patterns you haven't disrupted. The moment you challenge a belief, you weaken it. The moment you question it, you start to separate yourself from it. You begin to see it for what it really is, a thought, not a fact, a memory, not a destiny, a perspective, not the truth. And when you realize you've been living your life based on old, unexamined beliefs, something powerful happens. You stop blaming the world. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop blaming other people. You start taking ownership because you recognize that the only thing standing between you and your next level is the story you've been telling yourself. Breaking limiting beliefs doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens through repetition, through pattern interruption, through choosing again and again to step outside the boundaries your mind has drawn for you. Every time you take an action that contradicts a limiting belief, you're weakening the foundation it stands on. You're proving to your mind that the belief is outdated. And your mind loves evidence. It adapts. It rewires. It updates the story when you give it new proof. Most people wait to feel confident before taking action. But confidence doesn't come first, action does. Action is what cracks the belief open. Action is what reveals that what you thought was a wall was actually just a shadow. But as long as you let your limiting beliefs sit unchallenged, they feel solid. They feel absolute. They feel like just the way things are. That's why awareness is important, but awareness alone isn't enough. You have to confront what you find. You have to be willing to disrupt the patterns that have kept you comfortable but unsatisfied. Think about how your life would change if you stopped believing the thoughts that shrink you. Think about who you could become if you replaced "I can't" with "I will figure it out." Think about what opportunities would come alive if you stopped assuming rejection before you even try. Every major transformation begins the moment you stop letting the old story dictate your next move. The moment you realize you're the author, not the character trapped in someone else's script. And here's something important. You don't have to erase every limiting belief before moving forward. You just have to stop letting them lead. You don't have to eliminate fear. You just have to stop letting it make decisions for you. You don't have to feel ready. You just have to choose differently than you did yesterday. When you do that consistently, you start to break the cycle. You start to expand your identity. You start to see yourself as someone capable of more, deserving of more, destined for more. When you break limiting beliefs, you're not just changing your mind, you're changing your life. Because once the belief collapses, the limits collapse with it. Asterisk, asterisk. Break the belief and you break the barrier. Asterisk, asterisk. Once you recognize the thoughts that are holding you back, the real transformation begins when you consciously replace them with ones that empower you. Most people don't understand how much control they actually have over the thoughts they entertain. They assume a thought appears and they must follow it. But your mind is not a dictator, it's a tool. It takes direction from you. And when you start choosing thoughts that strengthen you instead of weaken you, you completely shift the trajectory of your life. Negative thoughts aren't just ideas, they're triggers. They create emotional states that drain your drive, distort your perception, and narrow your focus. One negative thought can spiral into fear, hesitation, procrastination, or self-doubt if you don't interrupt it. But empowering thoughts work the same way in the opposite direction. One empowering thought can elevate your energy, expand your possibilities, and move you from paralysis into action. It's the difference between telling yourself, "This is too hard," and shifting it to, "I can handle this." One keeps you stuck. The other pulls you forward. Replacing thoughts doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing the thought that serves you most in that moment. Instead of focusing on what might go wrong, focus on what you can control. Instead of obsessing over your weaknesses, lean into your strengths. Instead of replaying past failures, remind yourself of the times you got back up. You're not lying to yourself. You're reframing your thinking so it aligns with your potential rather than your fear. Empowering thoughts create empowering emotions. And empowering emotions create momentum. You start to move differently when you decide to direct your mind intentionally. You speak with more certainty. You take actions that once felt intimidating. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start creating it. You no longer operate from a place of lack or worry. You operate from a place of possibility. And that shift affects every part of your life. There's a moment in transformation where you realize you don't have to entertain every thought that crosses your mind. You can observe a negative thought and choose not to accept it. You can acknowledge fear without feeding it. You can notice doubt without letting it drive your decisions. That moment is when your power returns. Because the thoughts that used to control you lose their hold the second you stop believing them. Replacing negative thoughts with empowering ones is a practice, not a one-time event. You must train your mind the same way you train your body. Every time you catch a negative pattern and replace it, you build mental strength, you reinforce new pathways, your mind learns what to prioritize. Over time, empowering thoughts become your default, not the exception. And your life begins to reflect that. Shift in ways you couldn't imagine before. You've probably experienced moments where one empowering thought changed everything. Maybe it was a moment where you told yourself, I can do this. And suddenly the fear that felt overwhelming moments before became manageable. Maybe you took a risk you'd been avoiding. Maybe you stepped in an opportunity because you decided to think differently about yourself. Those moments weren't coincidences. They were the direct result of mental redirection. They show you what's possible when you take control of your inner dialogue. Imagine waking up each day and intentionally choosing thoughts that make you stronger, thoughts that align with the person you want to become. Imagine catching yourself before spiraling into negativity and shifting your focus towards solutions and growth. Imagine replacing doubt with determination, fear with courage, hesitation with action. That's not fantasy. That's a mental discipline anyone can develop. And it starts with one decision: to no longer accept thoughts that sabotage your potential. Your thoughts will shape your reality whether you choose them intentionally or not. So you might as well choose ones that build you, not break you. Thoughts that elevate you, not limit you. Thoughts that ignite your power instead of dimming it. Asterisk, asterisk, choose the thoughts that empower you and your life will rise to meet them. Asterisk, asterisk, emotion follows focus, and once you understand that, you begin to see why your life feels the way it does. Whatever you choose to focus on, whether it's empowering or disempowering, your mind will magnify it. It's like a spotlight in a dark room. If you point it toward fear, you'll feel fear. If you point it toward gratitude, you'll feel gratitude. If you point it toward possibility, you'll feel excitement and momentum. Your emotions aren't random. They're responses to the meaning you assign through your focus. And this is where most people unknowingly give their power away. You probably had days where nothing was actually wrong, yet everything felt heavy. And if you look back, you'll see that your focus had shifted toward what wasn't working, what you didn't have, what might go wrong. Your mind interpreted that focus as a threat, and your emotions responded accordingly. On the flip side, there have been moments where you felt unstoppable, inspired, connected moments where your focus was directed toward your strengths, your progress, your opportunities. The circumstances didn't necessarily change, your focus did. And with that shift came a transformation in your emotional state. When you direct your focus, you direct your energy. And when you direct your energy, you direct your actions. People underestimate how quickly their life can change simply by mastering what they concentrate on. Most stress comes from focusing on things beyond your control. Most fear comes from focusing on worst-case scenarios. Most discouragement comes from focusing on how far you still have to go instead of how far you've come. But when you choose to place your attention on what you can control, what's within reach, what's possible, your emotional state becomes a source of strength instead of a source of struggle. Focus is the filter through which you experience the world. Two people can face the same challenge and feel completely different about it simply because of what they choose to focus on. One focuses on the obstacle, the pain, the difficulty, and feels defeated before they begin. The other focuses on the opportunity to grow, the skills they'll develop, the future they're building, and feels motivated to push forward. The difference isn't the situation, it's the direction of their attention. You always have a choice to focus on what empowers you or what weakens you. And the more intentional you become with that choice, the more control you gain over your emotional state. This doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to let your mind exaggerate the negative while shrinking the positive. It means refusing to let fear dominate your mental landscape. It means consciously choosing to fuel emotions that align with the life you're creating. When you shift your focus, even slightly, everything inside you responds. Think of a time when you were overwhelmed and then someone reminded you of a solution or asked you a better question. Suddenly your focus lifted from the problem to the possibility. The situation didn't magically resolve itself, but your emotional state changed instantly. That shift in emotion created clarity, and clarity led to action. This is the power of focus. It interrupts emotional spirals and replaces them with direction. Your mind is always scanning for meaning, and what it finds depends entirely on where you aim your focus. If you focus on failure, you'll find proof of it everywhere. If you focus on progress, you'll find momentum. If you focus on what you can't control, you'll feel powerless. But if you focus on the actions you times can times take, even small ones, you'll feel capable and grounded. Your focus either fuels your fears or fuels your future. Imagine what your life would look like if you chose every day to focus on what strengthens you. Imagine shifting your attention from stress to strategy, from doubt to determination, from what's missing to what's possible. That shift alone would change your emotional state, and your emotional state would change your behavior, and your behavior would change your results. It all begins with a simple act of choosing where to place your attention. Master your focus, and you master the way you feel. Asterisk, asterisk. Where your focus goes, your life follows. Asterisk, asterisk. Your mind is just like your body. If you don't train it, it becomes weak, reactive, and unfocused. But if you condition it daily, it becomes strong, sharp, resilient, and unstoppable. Most people think motivation comes from random moments of inspiration, but real transformation comes from consistent mental conditioning. It comes from building habits that reinforce the thoughts, emotions, and actions that match the life you want to create. If you want to take control of your life, you have to train your mind with the same intensity and commitment you would train any muscle you expect to grow. A lot of people say they want change, but they wake up every day and repeat the same mental patterns that keep them stuck. They start the morning checking their problems, replaying their stress, thinking about what could go wrong, reacting to their environment instead of creating their state, and then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed, discouraged, unfocused, or unmotivated. You cannot expect a powerful life from an untrained mind. You need rituals. You need structure. You need daily practices that realign your thoughts with your purpose and remind you of who you are becoming. Mental conditioning starts the moment you wake up. The first thoughts you feed your mind set the tone for your entire day. If your morning begins with worry, frustration, or distraction, your mind gets conditioned to operate from those states. But if you begin your morning intentionally with gratitude, with clarity, with vision, you anchor your mind in strength before the world has a chance to influence you. Even a few minutes of conscious focus can change your entire emotional landscape. A few deep breaths, a moment of gratitude, a mental picture of the future you're building. These are not small things. These are powerful acts of direction. They tell your mind, this is who I am, this is where I'm going. This is how I choose to show up today. Visualization is a tool most people underestimate, yet it's one of the most effective ways to condition your mind. When you visualize your goals and the person you're becoming, your brain begins to believe it's possible. It fires the same neural pathways as if you were living it. That means every time you visualize your success, your confidence grows, your belief strengthens, your actions become more aligned. You start taking steps you once hesitated to take because your mind has already experienced the outcome. Visualization turns your future into something your mind recognizes as familiar, and the familiar becomes attainable. Another powerful tool is affirming the identity you want to embody. You don't repeat empowering statements to trick yourself. You repeat them to redirect yourself. Your subconscious listens to repetition. If you tell yourself every day that you're disciplined, focused, capable, and resilient, your mind begins to operate from those identities. You start acting like the person you keep declaring yourself to be. And the more you act in alignment with that identity, the stronger it becomes. It's not the words that transform you, it's the consistent alignment between your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Gratitude is another essential part of conditioning because it rewires your focus. It shifts your mind from scarcity to abundance, from stress to appreciation, from pressure to perspective. When you practice gratitude daily, even for small things, you interrupt the brain's natural tendency to focus on problems. You create emotional strength, which gives you the capacity to handle challenges without collapsing into negative states. Gratitude doesn't make your problems disappear, it makes you stronger than them. And then there's the practice of intentional focus throughout the day. This means paying attention to when your mind drifts into patterns that don't serve you. Fear, doubt, comparison, negativity, and pulling it back. Not judging it, not fighting it, just redirecting it. That redirection is mental conditioning. Every time you choose a more empowering focus, you strengthen your mental discipline. Even at night, before you sleep, conditioning matters. Your mind processes whatever you feed it last. Ending your day with reflection, acknowledging your progress, identifying your wins, recognizing your growth tells your mind to store those emotions as your baseline. You go to sleep aligned with your future, not your fears. When you build a daily mental conditioning routine, you stop living life by accident. You stop reacting to the world and start creating from within. You become intentional. You become clear. You become powerful. And everything in your life begins to match the strength of your inner world. Train your mind every day, and your life will never be the same. Asterisk, asterisk. Condition your mind, and you condition your destiny. Asterisk, asterisk.